Welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to be your guide today as we decode what we're calling the survival blueprint. We're going to look at the incredible, completely invisible machinery that keeps all living organisms, including you and me, from just, breaking down. Every single second of every day, there's this massive hidden world of activity happening right inside us. And today, we are going to make the invisible visible. Okay, so let's dive right into our roadmap. We're exploring 4 fundamental biological systems today. First, the core problem. 2, fueling up with nutrition. 3, unlocking energy with respiration. 4, the delivery system, which is transportation. And finally, number 5, cleaning up via excretion. Section 1, the core problem. What are life processes? To truly appreciate the mechanics of survival, we have to first understand what it is we're actually fighting against. Think about this for a second. If you see a dog running down the street, it's obviously alive, right? But what if that dog is asleep? Or what about a potted plant sitting completely still on your windowsill? We so often rely on visible movement to define life. But honestly, that's kind of a trap. A plant might not visibly move day to day, and a sleeping animal just breathes subtly. The true defining characteristic of life isn't visible movement at all. It's invisible molecular movement. If order breaks down at that microscopic level, the organism is no longer alive. So, the really crucial point here is that living creatures are incredibly organized structures, and they are constantly fighting against decay and entropy. Because the outside environment is always wearing us down, we have to continuously repair and maintain our cellular structures. These essential maintenance jobs, the ones that literally must keep going even when you're fast asleep, are what we call life processes. Now, all of this continuous repair work requires raw materials and energy from the outside world. And that brings us to Section 2, fueling up, or nutrition. Nature has basically come up with 2 main strategies to acquire carbon-based food. On one side, we've got the autotrophs, think green plants. They take simple, inorganic sources, like carbon dioxide and water, and use sunlight to literally build their own food. It's amazing. On the other side, we have heterotrophs, like us animals. We take the exact opposite approach. We consume highly complex carbon substances and then use biological catalysts, which are called enzymes, to break them down into simpler, usable forms. For us humans, this whole breakdown happens in the alimentary canal. It kicks off in the mouth, where we crush food and mix it with salivary amylase to start breaking down complex starches. Then it takes a trip down to the stomach, where hydrochloric acid and pepsin get to work dismantling proteins. Finally, it hits the small intestine, and this is where things get really fascinating. Here, bile salts act exactly like dish soap does on a greasy pan. They emulsify large fat globules into smaller ones, so enzymes can process them efficiently. Then, millions of tiny finger-like projections called villi absorb all those hard-earned nutrients straight into the blood.
Okay, so the food is broken down and absorbed. We've got the raw materials. But having the raw materials is not the same thing as having actual power. How do our cells actually squeeze the usable energy out of this food?
Well, that requires an entirely different system. Section 3, unlocking energy through respiration.
Biologically speaking, respiration isn't just breathing in and out. It's the chemical breakdown of glucose to fulfill your cellular needs. And there are 2 ways organisms pull this off. Aerobic respiration uses oxygen to completely break down glucose inside the cell's mitochondria, and that yields a massive amount of energy. But sometimes, like say when you're sprinting or lifting something super heavy, your muscle cells just run out of oxygen. When that happens, they switch to a backup pathway called anaerobic respiration. This happens in the cytoplasm without oxygen. It produces way less energy, and it creates a byproduct called lactic acid. That sudden buildup of lactic acid, that is exactly what gives you those painful muscle cramps during a hard workout.
Now, what's really fascinating here is this concept of a universal currency. All that cellular respiration is done to synthesize a molecule called ATP. Actually, think of ATP like a tiny rechargeable battery for your cells. Whether your body needs to contract a muscle, build a new protein, or fire a nervous impulse in your brain, it spends ATP to get the job done. It is absolutely the energy currency of life.
In simple, single-celled organisms, oxygen and nutrients just naturally diffuse right across their surface. Easy, right? But humans are huge, complex structures. If we relied purely on diffusion, scientists estimate it would take 3 whole years for a single molecule of oxygen to travel from our lungs all the way down to our toes. I mean, nobody has time for that. So how on earth do we solve this logistical nightmare?
We solve it with our next pillar, Section 4, the delivery system, or transportation. Because once we have the fuel and the oxygen, we absolutely need a network to move it everywhere instantly.
In humans, this entire network is driven by a fist-sized muscular pump, your heart, utilizing a brilliant double circulation system. It's so carefully separated. The right side of your heart receives deoxygenated blood from the body and pumps it straight to the lungs. Meanwhile, the left side receives that freshly oxygen-rich blood from the lungs and forcefully pumps it out to the rest of the body. This strict separation prevents the blood from mixing, which is absolutely crucial for mammals like us who require massive amounts of energy just to maintain our body temperature. And carrying that oxygen? Those are respiratory pigments called hemoglobin, acting as specialized cargo shuttles right inside your red blood cells.
Let's look at how this plays out in the plant world. Plants don't have hearts, obviously, but they've evolved an equally elegant vascular solution. They use two independent tube systems. The xylem acts just like a straw, moving water and minerals strictly upward from the roots. This is driven largely by the suction of water evaporating from the leaves, a process we call transpiration. Meanwhile, the phloem transports the sugary food created in the leaves both up and down to wherever the plant needs it, and it actually spends ATP energy to actively push those nutrients around.
Right, so we've brought in the fuel, we've unlocked the energy, and we've delivered it all across the body. But every single one of those chemical reactions creates byproducts. If left unchecked, these toxic wastes would just accumulate and eventually destroy the organism.
And this brings us to our final pillar, Section 5, cleaning up, or excretion.
To handle taking out this microscopic trash, human bodies rely on a pair of master filtration plants, the kidneys. Blood enters the kidneys under pressure and is pushed into these microscopic cup-shaped filters called Bowman's capsules. Each kidney is packed with huge numbers of these tiny filtration units, known as nephrons. They pull out the dangerous nitrogenous waste, like urea and uric acid. But they're smart about it. As the fluid travels down the tubes, the kidneys selectively reabsorb all the useful stuff, like glucose and the exact right amount of water your body needs that day. Whatever is left over becomes urine, which is safely stored in the bladder until it's time to go.
Plants, on the other hand, handle their waste entirely differently. Get this, oxygen itself, the very thing you and I desperately need to survive, is technically just a waste product generated by plants during photosynthesis. Wild, right? And for their other waste, plants will cleverly store it in cellular vacuoles, pack it into leaves that are just about to fall off, or even store it as old resins and gums in their bark.
Before we wrap up, I just have to leave you with one detail that perfectly captures the unbelievable scale of these biological systems inside you. Think back to the respiratory system, where your lungs branch out into those tiny balloon-like structures called alveoli to absorb oxygen. If you were to take the surface area of all those tiny alveoli inside your lungs and spread it completely flat, it would cover roughly 80 square meters. That is literally nearly the size of a tennis court folded up inside your chest, doing nothing but keeping your blood oxygenated.
From microscopic molecular movements fighting off entropy, to chemical factories dissolving food, to immense vascular highways and complex cellular filtration units, you are a walking, breathing miracle of biological engineering. With such vast, invisible systems working flawlessly inside you right now just to keep you alive and thriving, the only question left is, what are you going to do with all that energy today? Thanks so much for exploring this blueprint with me. Keep wondering, keep learning, and I will see you in the next explainer.